to introduce you to Professor Soumik. It is my pleasure that Dr. Soumik Siddhanta, Associate Professor in the Department of Chemistry at IIT Delhi, has decided to take this session. He leads the Nanoscopic Imaging and Sensing Lab, where his research focuses on developing advanced tools for biological imaging and diagnosis using nanotechnology and spectroscopy. Dr. Siddhanta has over 50 international publications. He has worked at Johns Hopkins University and Purdue University and has received several awards, including IUSSTF Fellowship and the ASLMS Research Grant. He was also named an emerging investigator by the Journal of Materials Chemistry B in 2023. And the best part, when he's not in the lab, he's often found playing the tabla. He's a passionate percussionist, and he's also a passionate teacher. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Siddhanta.
Yeah, so thanks, Samanjan, for the kind introduction, and very good evening to everyone. So, am I audible, visible to everyone?
Loud
Just
and
wanted
clear,
to
sir.
check.
But I will still request, dear teachers, if you can please turn on your cameras, it will be really appreciated.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. So I'll just share my screen as I speak. Okay. Uh, so I'm guessing in the audience I have all teachers exclusively from all around India, right, Samanjan? Okay,
Yes, sir.
that's great. So great to have you all, and hopefully we will have a very nice session in next 1 hour. Okay, so just sharing my screen here. Is it visible?
Loud and clear, sir.
You can see my screen, right?
We can, sir. We can.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So, so today, so first of all, I would like to actually congratulate Somanjan and his team at Macmillan for inviting me for this webinar, and also congratulate them for successfully running the Macmillan Budding Scientist program. Okay, and since couple of years, I have been, I had the good opportunity, like to be one of their jury members for their zonal as well as the grand finale for this, wonderful opportunity for the kids. Okay, so but today, so in the same line. So I'm going to speak about a topic which is actually I've never spoken before, but like it's a very important topic, what I believe, and also very relevant to the Macmillan Budding Scientist program. I'm sure you all of you are, aware of that. And So the topic is about curiosity in science. Okay, why cultivating curiosity is very important in science. Okay, so as someone said, I am located in the Department of Chemistry at IIT Delhi, and I lead a group which works in a very interdisciplinary area covering optics, biophotonics, and molecular spectroscopy. So you can see here. This is our beautiful campus at IIT Delhi, and you can see the building here. Maybe I'll take a pointer. Uh, Building here, and I'm located on the 6th floor right now. And this is one of our labs, like one of my favorite labs in our institute, which is our UG lab. Okay, UG chemistry lab. And so if you have a chance, please come to the campus. Please visit us, and you can of course write to me if you're making any plans in the future. So as we go forward, please don't hesitate to actually stop me, raise your hand, unmute yourself and ask questions. Okay, because this is otherwise this will be like pretty boring. Okay, uh, yeah. So so this is my experience with Macmillan Budding Scientist. Some snippets of the events, where I was the jury member. So based upon that experience and how the kids, progress and how they present their work, so I was very intrigued. Of course, they're very brilliant kids, but it's very important to actually nurture them very in the right way so that they can give their absolute best. And at such a grand platform, they can actually drive, show their innovative side and drive the innovations to further in their life. Okay, so today I just wanted to discuss about the curiosity. Okay, so why it is important, why it is really important in science education, as well as uh, maybe participating in the MBS program itself. Okay, so I'll start with a little bit of technical definitions and other things related to curiosity and how it works. Okay, and then I'll kind of show you some aspects of someone, a scientist, okay, whose entire life was driven by curiosity. Okay, and actually who went on to win Nobel Prize. Okay, then I'll also share some of the strategies uh, where you can incorporate curiosity directly in the curriculum or in your teaching. Okay, some of the guidelines, maybe many of you already do that or are well aware of that, but still we can actually have a discussion about that. And then how do you evaluate? Okay, so this is another thing. Like you can suggest something, okay, but how do you make sure? How do you really see like what is the progress in the kids and how you can evaluate whether they're on the right track? Okay, so okay, so I'm going to start. Okay, basically a little bit of depressing note. Okay, about a little bit of a dip in student performance in schools. Okay, so it has been seen that irrespective of where they are and what kind of schools they are, so the performance from grade 7 to 9 of boys, both boys and girls, have been dipping. Okay, as they progress to higher grades. Okay, so this is of course taken from a research paper in Europe, basically Netherlands. Okay, and I couldn't actually find related statistics from India, but I'd like to ask you, like, uh, do you also have you also seen a trend like this? For example, a little bit of dip in performance or motivation, or like little bit of curiosity, a little bit of motivation among the students. So uh, have you come across this, or do you agree with this? That's the question. Okay, yeah, Manpreet, you raised your hand. Maybe you can
Yeah.
unmute.
Yes. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good
Good
evening, good
evening, sir.
evening.
Because of network issue, my video is switched off. I really
Okay.
feel so because I feel that presently the present generation is having lots of distractions,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
with the social media, they feel that actually study is not that important. So that's why
Mhm.
that decline is there. But once
Okay.
we like motivate students by asking different questions, not to the
Mhm.
all students, but yes, it affects students and motivate them to study. That's my personal experience in the class. Because when
Okay.
we start our topic with the open-ended questions, the
Mhm.
and or with the experiment, that definitely bring curiosity among the students.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Absolutely, like very pertinent point. Okay, yeah, Dr. Aarti, you have something to add to this? Yeah, I can't hear you, Dr. Aarti. I think some issues.
Mpunta Angel, mpunta mamake.
Uh,
Mama போட்டிருக்கு.
okay. Okay. Anyways, so I think uh, somebody is unmuted. Okay. Yeah, Dr. Aarti, you want to try once more to speak? I couldn't hear you. Oh, I can't hear you actually. Maybe some problem with your mic, but we can take your question later, maybe through the chat. Okay.
Soumik
Okay.
sir, I just have one
Yes.
announcement to make. So if anybody is trying to speak and your microphone is not allowing you, what you can do is you can send in your question via the chat and I will read it out for Soumik sir. That is also
Oh,
something that we can look at.
yeah. Perfect. Perfect. Thanks, Sumanjan. Okay. Yeah. So absolutely agree with what Manpreet said. I mean, there is a lot of distraction, and our society is changing basically because of the advent of technology and all. Okay, but but still, it has been a general trend even earlier. So if you see here, uh, so this is a observation from a paper by Parvano in 1990s. Okay, so where he says that the children are actually born scientists. So from the first ball they send flying to the ant, they watch carrying a crumb. Children use science as tools, enthusiasm, hypothesis, test, conclusion to uncover the world's mysteries. Okay, but somehow the students seem to lose what once came naturally. Okay, so and this is even before the advent of uh, the technology, social media, and everything. Okay, so this is something bit universal, I can say. Of course, this has been further accelerated by our social media. Okay, so the reason actually given in many of the research papers are motivational and cognitive factors. Okay, the decline, or there is a very subtle interplay between motivational and cognitive factors which actually play a role in the observed performance decline in school students. Okay, so the question is, how do we circumvent that? How do we prevent that problem? Okay, so that's the biggest question. Okay, so before we try to find the solutions, okay, so let's understand what really is curiosity. Okay, so for example, like once very famously, William James, okay, said long back, that everyone knows what attention is. Okay, but at that time, nobody could actually find a proper definition of curiosity. Okay, so because of this lack of consensus about what curiosity means, and how you can measure, how really you can measure something which is kind of like a intuitive feeling to others, right? So so because of all these things, there was kind of like a diminished enthusiasm for establishing curiosity as something of a standard in education. Okay, in particularly in early child education, where it can be very play a very fundamental role. Okay, so and also like curiosity is taken as a desirable attribute of a fully developed person. So it is not kind of attributed to a child, particularly in early education, but the glimpses of that actually points that the child is getting slowly getting oriented towards the real world. So uh, so these are some of the this is some of the points from the US Department of Education. So what they have done is, even in 1990s, so they actually recognized that curiosity should be kind of like measured and then incorporated somehow in the school curriculum. Okay, so as you can see here that you know so University of Chicago Laboratory School, they incorporated this many of these aspects into their curriculum, in 1990s itself, followed by National Education Goals Panel in the US. Okay, where they acknowledge that openness and curiosity about new tasks and challenges, can be an indicator of the school readiness. And NEGP also noticed very interestingly that children who start school with a lack of curiosity are at a greater risk of subsequent school failure than other children. Okay, so this is very interesting observation, and very alarming one too. Okay, and if some of you are aware of research, many research journals, so there is something some association called American Association for Advancement of Science, who also publish the prestigious science journal. Okay, so they also conduct annual workshops for elementary schools to train them how to use development, this kind of rubrics for, developing the curriculum and, fostering children's scientific curiosity. Okay, so the curiosity is actually a thing. Okay, so it's like we think that, okay, well, what is it? Okay, it's just an intuitive thing and it cannot be, really incorporated in the curriculum, but it's not so. Okay, so this proves that. Okay, so another aspect about curiosity is it's also very much intertwined with motivation. Okay, so if somebody doesn't know the definition of different kinds of motivation, so there are basically two broad areas of motivation, like intrinsic motivation. So where, a person is, they do what they do just for the fun of it. Okay, just because they really love it, whatever they're doing. But there is something called extrinsic motivation also. So where, they do something for a goal for a reward. Okay, rather than, you know. Uh, the enjoyment of the activity itself. So, okay, so these are two different things. Okay, but there is a very, very close relationship with curiosity. Okay, in particularly in the child's mind. Okay, so how this is related to the curiosity is, so for example, if you see, there are two different flowcharts. What you can see is, first of all, if you look at the intrinsic motivation to search for something, for novelty or complexity, it actually leads to a state of curiosity, which actually in turn fosters learning and memory retention. Okay, so basically motivation is very closely tied to curiosity. Okay, and curiosity can even lead further to motivation. And then finally it fosters learning. Okay, and in the second one, if you see, it's called a learning progress hypothesis, where, the intrinsic motivation, okay, it arouses state of curiosity, and it leads to learning, memory retention, and it actually acts as a positive feedback loop for, arising further curiosity and motivation in the students. Okay, so these are kind of like a published results with a lot of, research going behind it. Okay, but then a question comes now is, how this works. Okay, and how we can really learn from some of these researches. Okay, so any questions till now? Anything? Yeah, Tanya, your hand is raised. You want to comment on something? Um, okay, so before I go into the techniques, I wanted to share with you uh, about the life of a Nobel laureate. Okay, so who is none other than you know Dr. C.V. Raman. Okay, so I guess everyone here knows Dr. C.V. Raman, or Sir C.V. Raman. Okay, so he is still the lone Indian science Nobel laureate. Unfortunately, but hopefully in the future it will change. Uh, so we know that C.V. Raman discovered the Raman effect, and he got the Nobel Prize. Do we know anything else about Sir C.V. Raman? That's the question. Anyone wants to answer? Like, do we know anything else about his life? Like, how he got the Nobel? Like, what prompted him? Like, what drove him to science, for example, at such an early age where there was literally no science infrastructure in the country? Okay. Uh, so it was in like 1880, early 1900s, where just science was just starting to grow and there was literally nothing. So how did he get into science? What drove him? Okay, so we know very little about that. But recently I had a chance to dig up something about his life, about his teaching. And I was really, really very, kind of inspired by him. So I thought I'll share some of the things. So interestingly, Sir C.V. Raman and Srinivasa Ramanujan, so they were almost contemporaries. So they're almost born at the same time, but Unfortunately, Ramanujan's life was cut short very tragically, quite early. But of course, like we have seen a lot of movies about Ramanujan, but not much about Raman. Okay, but Raman was equally revered in the US. Like when US people, they wanted to make a statue of Ramanujan. So another scientist saw that we also need to have a statue of Sir C.V. Raman because of the contributions he have to Indian science. Okay, such was his fame at that time. Okay, so this was something very striking, and I'm sure many of you don't know about this. So this paper publication, what you see on the left, it was from 1906, and if he is born in 1888, you can guess what his age was. And this was a scientific paper communicated by the author, and the author was solely C.V. Raman. There was no one else. That means he did his experiments on his own in Presidency College, Chennai, Madras that time, and so it was a predominant UG college with no research facilities, and then he could do some very similar research. Okay, so this research was diffraction of light due to a rectangular aperture. Okay, so this was very relevant at that time because because of its relevance to explaining the diffraction from crystal lattices, X-ray diffraction from crystal lattices. So this was pretty amazing, considering that he was only 17 or 18 years of age, without any formal, training in research, without any guidance from anybody. He could actually do a very good piece of research and communicate it. Okay, and he looked like a kid. You can see from the picture here. Okay, so then how did he do this? And this on the left, just a few months after this first paper, he also sent a second paper. Okay, and this was on determining, the surface tension of liquid. So he developed a very meticulous, nice and elegant method to, determine the surface tension of liquids. And just after the publication of his paper, after he communicated the paper, Lord Rayleigh. So I think many of you know about Lord Rayleigh. So he started communicating with Raman and started calling him professor, though he didn't. So he was just a UG student, and he was not even a PhD and eligible to be called a professor. Okay, so this was the letter Lord Rayleigh wrote to Raman in 1906. Okay, very inspiring. I can't read a single word of this letter, but I think there is something very important might have been written here. Okay, so this was so then from a period from 1906 to 1917. Okay, he actually focused his research on acoustics. Like he tried to investigate whether the exquisite sound of Veena is due to our the ability to hear. Is it something in our ear, or is it something? Is there some physical basis behind the sweetness of the sound? Okay, so so he did a lot of research, published a lot of papers on this, and also he published a very beautiful paper on the acoustical knowledge of ancient Hindus. And he actually became at that time a world authority on sound and musical instruments. Okay, see the progression. Okay, so he was interested in light. Okay, sound. Okay, and then he actually went to London, St. Paul's Cathedral, and then he did a lot of experiments on whispering galleries. Okay, where you have this round structure, dome kind of structure, where you can actually listen to whispers at specific points in the room. Okay, so coming to the question, he also actually, designed a very interesting method to actually, measure the frequency or the, wire in a tension in a wire. Sorry. Okay. So all these things were very interesting topics of research at that time. Okay. But the question is, what are the problems he tackles? Like, how did he choose those problems? Okay, there has to be a basis which prompted him to choose the problem. Okay, so here I have actually put a kind of cutout here. You can see that it is remarkable that every one of this is connected with his direct experience, thus arousing his curiosity. Okay, so the entire, it's very interesting to note, so his entire experience or entire experience during his childhood, from hearing his father playing the violin, okay, uh, to even staying very near to the beach, going to school which was near to the beach, it actually aroused a lot of interest in him, a curiosity in him to research on waves. Okay, so including sound from the violin which his father played, or the waves which were created in the ocean. Okay, so these things surrounding him aroused, awakened his curiosity in all these research topics. Okay, so then he also did a lot of research on acoustics. Like you can see the tabla, as Somanjan said, I also kind of play tabla, so I kind of very interested. So you can see here that he showed how using two different thickness of the skins on a tabla can actually generate different modes, different sound modes. Okay, and so this was he did a lot of research on this kind of acoustics and the kind of harmonics this sound produces. Okay, and he actually compared them to the stringed instruments even. Okay, so he got a very much interested in waves. Okay, and then he could, the one thing we can also learn from Raman is he was a very good communicator right from his early school or college. Why? Because it is it's a picture of Marina Beach, Madras, from long back. And then he writes here, the Raman writes here that the English, they were taught English. He was taught English by British teachers in their schools, and which was overlooking the sea. Okay, so he actually got very much interested in both of them. Okay, so if you can read this passage, it's very nicely written. So both of these things, so he could actually communicate in very good words. Okay, that's why he could even send his paper to the top journals at those times, actually. Okay, so after he returned to India from his famous voyage on the ship, where he found out why sky is blue, why the water or the sea looks blue. Okay, and so he found out the inelastic scattering of light, and he focused his research on these three topics, like the scattering of light by liquid, scattering of X-rays by liquid, and the viscosity of liquids. Okay, so all this coming from his everyday experience or childhood experience. Yeah. So yeah, any comments from anyone? Okay. Okay, so his ideas were very much ahead of the time. Okay, so he even kind of predicted the X-ray scattering also, which won another Nobel Prize at that time. Okay, so a lot of things to learn from Sir C.V. Raman. Like his entire career is actually curiosity driven. Okay, so if you read his biography, okay, so for the next 6 years, after starting the work, he immersed himself to studying this inelastic scattering, and then the quantum mechanics was kind of being born, like being developed at that time. And his experiment was the first experiment which directly proved the quantum effect. Okay, so it kind of propelled his discovery even more, and he got Nobel Prize in 2 years in 1930, just after discovery of Raman effect. So this is one of the fastest Nobel Prizes ever, somebody has received. Okay, so since I have spoken about Raman, so let me just touch upon what is this Raman effect. Okay, so this is how we announce the Raman effect. Like I proposed this evening to speak to you on a new kind of radiation and light emission. Okay, so what he did was he kind of developed very elegant experimental setups. Okay, like from whatever things he had around him. Okay, because of the non-existent research infrastructure at that time. So what he did was he used sunlight for the Raman effect. So then he took a violet filter, so you have a violet light here falling on a liquid. Okay, so liquid can be different solvents or something, and then at that time it was known then the liquid scatters light. So this is the Rayleigh scattered light, which is kind of the same frequency, violet. But what he noticed was he also noticed a green light being scattered from the liquid along with the violet, original violet light. Okay. So he put a green filter here. He saw a secondary radiation, a new kind of radiation, which is green. Okay. So people that time thought that, okay, this is fluorescence, very weak fluorescence or something, but they did a lot of experiments to find out that this is indeed inelastic scattering from light. Okay, which gives lot of information about the bond vibrations present in the scattered liquid. Okay, so this was a very uh, very important discovery at that time. Okay, which actually directly connected lot of theories in quantum mechanics at that time. Okay, which gave him the Nobel Prize. So this was some of the jugaad he did in his own lab. This was pretty amazing. So since he used sunlight, so it's a challenge to actually keep this, because the sun moves, right? So it is difficult to get a constant intensity of light into the lab because the sun moves, right? So what he did was he designed a so he had a very ingenious solution. So he designed a like in-house heliostat. So what he did was he connected a mirror, he took a mirror which was connected to a clock, okay, which moves along with the sun. Okay, so whatever light was reflected inside the room was always constant. Okay, so with this beam he did all these experiments. Okay, then he did direct vision spectroscope. He designed different spectroscopes in his lab, okay, for doing this experiment. So he was a brilliant spectroscopist, okay, and he was very curious about everything around him. Okay, so now Raman spectroscopy, what he discovered like almost 100 years back, uh, it has actually gone big, and it has even been used to detect Martian life and water on Mars and water on Moon. Okay, so the Raman spectroscopy was one of the techniques which was carried aboard by the landers, and it was used to detect water and life on Mars, okay, or on Moon. And then it can also do very sensitive kind of analysis, like for example detecting virus. For example, it can detect different virus, which was very kind of relevant during the corona times, right? So it can do many different things, and which was all started by Raman. Okay, so what we can learn from his life is, of course, like curiosity. Okay, what he says in his own words, or what his biography says, it actually sparks creativity, and curiosity is the main thing. It leads to exploration, okay, of some topic which is kind of cannot has not been attempted before. Okay, so it also helps in problem solving, and it also encourages learning. So that's the very important part about curiosity. Okay, so another thing I just wanted to highlight was what we can learn from Raman was his ability to connect to global scientists. Okay, you can see him with Crompton, with Bohr, with Heisenberg, all big scientists from those times, and it was actually very important because innovation or curiosity or motivation doesn't actually come in isolation. Okay, so collaborate you have to collaborate in terms of work or ideas, globally, if not globally, at a national level. So this is very, very important. So if Raman would not have been so much, this was pre-phone, even I think telephone was also very difficult at this time, like normal telegram and other things. So at those time he had built such a network. Okay, so this is one of the take home message that you know you know to sustain creativity, it cannot be done in isolation. So you have to reach out, you have to go out. Okay, so this is something, another lesson which we learn, uh, which takes me to the next important point is this quote I got, like I don't know who actually, it's a kind of anonymous quote, but it says that teaching and learning thrive when rooted in a global context. Okay, where diverse perspectives are embraced, cultures are celebrated, and knowledge is seen as a bridge to understanding and unity across the borders. Okay, so it's very important to have a global context. Like if you're thinking something, you have to think like not only in a national context, but in the global context as well. Like how you learn and how you design problems or projects, even for the students. Okay. So so coming to designing projects, I just wanted to touch upon a few techniques. Okay. Uh, like for example, the question is, I wanted to put this question in front of you, that for example, if you are suggesting a project to a student or a group of students, how do you do that? Okay, or how do you incorporate the projects, okay, or innovations in your curriculum directly? So any suggestions or any uh, practical experience you want to share? Anyone, you can raise your hand. Maybe. Or how important is project in your current curriculum? If anybody wants to share something in short. Yeah, Manpreet, I think you raised your hand. You can unmute.
Yeah, good evening, sir, once again.
Yeah,
Sir,
good
I
evening.
feel that projects are very important because
Mhm,
as I am telling you the personal experience, as first time this year, we got the pamphlet for the Macmillan budding scientist, and that
mhm,
enhanced lots of curiosity among the students because when they come up with the idea, I
mhm,
was like, they bring something new, bring something new. So
mhm,
actually, they worked a lot, and we worked on multiple topics, sir. It's like a complete research work. So that
mhm.
was fun filled also, and a learning
Okay.
out of the school curriculum also, which is very important for the present generation, so that they
Mhm.
can excel actually in this world and work for the
Okay.
development of the country.
Okay.
Today
No.
also,
Mhm.
like students came to me and they're like, "Ma'am, when is the next Macmillan?" I was in seventh
Okay.
at that time, and now I want to go. So I simply
Mhm,
said them, "You start finding new innovative topics. If you
mhm.
have a good idea, then we will work." So
Okay.
it's a great experience, and now you told us, I'll definitely work on that also. That the different
Mhm,
research journals are there, which are giving
mhm.
the workshops to the students and to the teachers. I will
Yes.
definitely explore that, sir. So thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. Thanks for sharing, Manpreet. Yeah, Kanchan, your comments. You can unmute yourself.
Good evening, sir. Sir,
Yeah. Good
I'm glad
evening.
the last 3 years this
Mhm,
Macmillan Budding is running in our school, and even the students got selected for the final also. So
mhm,
it is really giving a great opportunity for the children as well, and it's a new experiences and exploration in our school. So it is
mhm,
directly in the curriculum, but yes, definitely in every year from the last 3 years, which I am
mhm.
experiencing, is one of the most important project student want to do, and lots of
Okay.
children participating. So thank you for this.
Yeah, yeah, no, great to know. Great to know that you have been actively participating and also becoming successful in the program, your teams. Yeah, Safia, you wanted to share something? You can unmute yourself. Yeah, you can speak if. Um, okay, maybe the audio is not coming, but we can take your comments in the text. What about Shivani? You can unmute yourself. Yeah, you can again unmute yourself. I think yeah, it's muted.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Yeah, good
As
evening.
we're asking about generating curiosity in the students, that
Mhm,
by this project methods, that yeah, really we can actually make the students motivated by the projects to create curiosity among the students for generating such type of curiosity. That
mhm,
as we know that the projects join that can that can help the students to ask the question, understanding the
mhm,
topic, and fostering inquiry based learning,
mhm.
as
Yeah.
projects often involve real world problems and scenarios, making the
Mhm,
learning more effective and relevant and engaging.
mhm. Yeah, very nice to hear from you, Shivani. Yeah, Vijay.
For a good session.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Vijay, you can unmute and speak. Can you hear me, Vijay? You can unmute yourself. Okay, maybe some problem. Okay, so yeah, thanks for sharing your views, and it's very heartening to see that how this kind of projects initiated by MBS is having a very positive effect on your kids in the school. So some of you also spoke about inquiry-based learning and solving real-world challenges, which are very important. So what I wanted to do is to give a bit of structure to this thought process. Okay, so maybe it will be a little bit helpful for you uh, to exactly do things in a little bit of structured manner. So I have often seen that in the budding scientist program, a lot of course, there are very good presentations and very good projects, but some of these projects, there is a very conscious effort to do something very fancy, like very fancy robots, but without thinking about what problem it is going to solve. Okay, what really, how it contributes to the society, or even how it contributes to their own learning. Okay, so I believe that it should not be like only very fancy looking good, or in the context of being very tech savvy, but it should be very well thought out. Okay, there should be like critical thinking, collaboration, and it should also promote communication skills. Okay, so the questions have to be designed very nicely. Experiments have to be designed with a lot of thoughts. Data has to be collected, and communication, the findings should be communicated, or the communication should be very top level. Okay, so how to do that? Okay, so this can be done, as some of you already said, through something which is called project based learning. Okay, so it can be incorporated partially in the teaching, in the way you teach, or it can be introduced uh, to the classes where you kind of train these kind of students to be to do projects basically. Okay, so collaboration is the key, because it's always a team effort, right? Collaboration between the students is also key. So we'll see that this kind of collaboration is also very much necessary. Okay, and how we can harness this collaboration to do something even better. Okay, so talking about projects and project based learning, so there is a little bit of difference. Okay, so I instead of speaking, I thought I'll show you this very short video.
Today, we're going to start a new project. Teachers and their students have been doing projects since forever. More and more are doing project-based learning. So what's the difference?
That's a great question. Let's start off by reviewing.
Projects are typically limited in scope and duration. They're a good way for students to work with content they've already learned.
Flip to the paper that says sundial.
In project-based learning, students learn through the project. Interesting. They address a real-world problem, a driving question, one that can't be Googled and has no single right answer.
We were talking about how can we prepare for Atlanta's change in weather.
Students have voice and choice in PBL, some input into how they'll answer the driving question.
Does anybody think they might have some ideas?
So they gain ownership of their learning.
So those questions led to our investigation.
They collaborate in a process of sustained inquiry, lasting more than a few days.
We've got a whole lot of work to do.
They reflect on their learning through discussions, formative assessments, and critiques of their peers' work.
We are going to take a look at one of your friends' work today.
And then revise their work based on those reflections.
Okay, there we go. We got it. You can tell it by.
The final product is shared with an audience beyond the classroom. Maybe that's professionals in a related field.
I appreciated how thoughtfully you responded.
Or it could be the kids in the class next door. When students spend an hour exploring the four forces of flight by crafting a Mars lander out of paper, that's a project. When they spend a month simulating a Mars landing, analyzing the math and physics at work, and discussing their work with real aerospace engineers.
And it sounds like you've done a little bit of testing to see if that was.
Yeah. That's project-based learning.
Capiche?
Research shows that rigorous PBL can result in higher engagement and deeper content knowledge.
Keep it up, okay?
Learn more about project-based learning at.
Yeah. So pretty amazing, isn't it? So basically, the take-home message from this video is, kind of like a suggestion is, instead of giving direct projects to the students in the context of this, for example, MBS, it's always nice to engage them in a little bit of little long-term project-based learning. So there are two pros, like there are a few pros of that, because if you just give a project, so they just do only that what you ask them to do. Okay, and they don't learn it in the broader context most of the time. Okay, so it becomes a little bit localized. So that kind of confidence in defending their project, okay, and how it can be used, in different ways, okay, in different other ways or translated in other fields, it becomes a little bit of issue, but which is kind of being, can be easily solved by, project-based learning by engaging kids, organically in a little bit long stretch of time. Give them a project where they can learn something fundamentally new or interesting, and then they can actually take this project forward and then finally formalize a project which can be used for presentation. Yeah, I see a hand up by Raktim. Yeah, if you have some comments, you can unmute yourself. Yeah, Raktim, you can unmute yourself if you want. Okay, maybe we can take your question later. Okay, so basically there are 5 phases of project-based learning, or if you are deciding to ultimately do or present your idea or solve a problem. Okay, so these are the 5 phases. So one is the project planning, which is very important, project launch, project implementation, project conclusion, and project debrief. Okay, so it looks very simple, but there are a lot of things behind it. So I'll take this case by case. Okay, so first we need a starter template. Okay, anything like before we plan the project, we need a starter template. So this looks something like this on the top, where you ask like how we can do, or how can we do something so that it happens, so that dash, what is the purpose for this and for whom. Okay, so this is very, very important. Okay, so for example, how can we design a purifier, okay, to clean up the air pollution for people in Delhi, for example. Okay, so this is the template you need to have. Okay, and then based upon that, you need to have a very proper planning of or the project planning. Okay, so this is kind of like done by the teacher, so who identifies what knowledge and skills they want the students to learn, like what is the level of learning they want to have. So basically, if you see here, so this is a very famous pyramid which is called the Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, so it actually categorizes learning into higher order thinking skills and lower order thinking skills. So where you have different educational objectives here. Okay, so for example, the basic level is the remembering. Okay, where the student can recall specific facts, which is followed by understanding, and then application, analyzing the facts, evaluating the facts, and finally creation. Okay, so this is the higher level of thinking which is needed. Okay, so the project planning actually involves understanding and remembering mostly. So like the bottom or bit of lower order skills. Okay, and uh, and and the goal is this ones, like to identify the learning target to be pulled out. Okay, so need to know questions. Okay, then the mapping of the cognitive path or the thinking journey, design and student products, or plan the instruction, scaffolding, and assessments. Okay, so even before the students are kind of involved in the project, you the teachers also can actually do some kind of background planning to incorporate these basic things, okay, or the driving questions or DQ, which are very important for the potential project. Okay, so then you have the project launch. Okay, so which actually involves a little bit of higher order thinking or in the creation level. Okay, uh, so introduction of the driving question and the authentic audience for that. Okay, so for example, the driving question can be how we can create so that something happens. Okay, then clarify the product, purpose, and audience. Okay, who is going to use that? Okay, what is the product is going to be? What is the purpose of doing this project? Okay, and then develop the need to knows. Okay, so what the students need in the background to do this project. Okay, so then after this, the students become active in the project. Okay, so the next steps are, of course, project implementation, where teachers actually again play a very, very important role. And you can see it's still in the understanding and remember level of Bloom's, that students slowly read about the project, think about the project, acquire and understand the concepts. Teacher uses inquiry exercise. I'll discuss that later in the later slides. And students and teachers, they sit together, critique each other, have very critical reviews of their ideas and all the things. Okay, so these are very important part of the project implementation. And then while the project goes advances, so you have finally you come to a project conclusion, where it's again involves a higher order thinking. So where the students finally share the product, okay, with the target audience. Okay, so the job of the teacher is very important here, because you have to, you know instead of just going by your intuition or feeling, you need to have a solid rubric. Okay, solid rubric to assess the progress or achievement of each group. Okay, so the teacher assesses knowledge and understanding of the individual. So there are ways to create this kind of rubrics, so which I will also share in my next slides. Okay, so the final part is the project debrief. Okay, the formal and informal reflection on planning, products, and processes. So the students reflect on their products and processes, teachers reflect. And another good idea is to bring experts from outside, okay, for the students to display their ideas and projects. Okay, so that actually helps them to get a lot of ideas for improving their projects. And so the interaction itself with a external expert can do wonders. Okay, so these are some of the parts of project-based learning. So little bit now, as we are getting little bit of structure in our thought process, now the thing is uh, how to strategize. Okay, like you have decided a problem, for example. Okay, suppose you have decided a problem. uh, how to strategize, like how will you take the idea forward? Okay, like you have got a vague, for example, a overall project idea. For example, you want to reduce the air pollution. Okay, so this is a overall project idea. Now how do you approach that idea? Okay, so the idea is pretty novel, it is pretty global, it is pretty local also. Okay, it involves different layers and other things. How do you approach this problem? Okay, so any ideas? Anyone wants to comment on this? Like, how would you like to address this problem? Any ideas from your own experience? Anyone wants to raise hand and speak? Based upon your experience. Okay, okay, no issues. So let me just tell you 4 different strategies very quickly. Okay, you can practice them, you can see how you can maybe use them. And these are not really exhaustive strategies. There are so many different strategies which you can also make yourself. So the first strategy is kind of like a peel the fruit. Okay, so it's a very famous kind of strategy. So it is like a fruit. Your idea is like a fruit, where you have the outside skin. You have in the outside skin, what do you see, observe, or notice? Okay, so under the skin, what questions or puzzles do you have about that idea. Building explanation. So this is the seeds, basically what is really about, then making connections, having different viewpoints from different perspectives, what is the central message or idea. So this is the capturing the heart. Okay, so these are different parts of the fruit, or this is the peel the fruit strategy, so which really helps to, if you have an idea and explore the idea or a topic, this kind of approach, you can do this diagrammatically also with your students. You make a fruit and make them write all these things. Okay, this really actually helps. Okay, so then these are some of the a little going deeper into the peel the fruit thing. So you can see that you have to define the purpose. Okay, application, for example, to explore a topic, idea, concept, and then assessment. Like, so once your project is done, so how do you assess the thing? Okay, so this is also very, very important. So I'll discuss that also later. Okay, so this is the different steps of the pillar of the proof. So you have to set up the problem first, then outside scheme, what do you see, observe, under scheme. So you have to make different viewpoints, capturing the heart, and the share this thinking with the entire class. Okay, so these are some of the very important points, which so you can just draw this fruit and to make the students write on a whiteboard or on a big notice board or something like this. So it really helps to develop an idea which can be understandable or everyone can understand. And if a group is working, so they can come on the same page using this kind of ideas. Okay, so another strategy which I'm going to speak about is it's something called hexagonal thinking. Okay, so anybody has heard of hexagonal thinking before? You can raise your hand maybe. Okay, so okay, maybe something little bit new for you. Okay, so I have a very short video to show you about hexagonal thinking, which also you can use to drive a project or to design a project. Okay.
Hexagonal thinking is a really creative mode for discussion that gives kids a chance to think about concepts in a whole new way. It gets students to practice critical thinking and real world skills in terms of explaining, debating, and writing. You can use it as a great review to go back over a unit. You can use it as a launch to any type of project or paper. It's super easy to make a template. You just drop little hexagon shapes onto your slide and add some text on top. I got some interesting terms from your unit and some connections from other disciplines or ideas from pop culture, news, world history, anything that could connect to what you're studying. Let's say that you had just taught the book 1984. You might start by just choosing some basic terms like Orwell, the title of the book, and then some concepts like doublethink and thought crime, and some characters like Winston, Julia, O'Brien. But then you might think about, okay, what can I pull out of history? Marx and Stalin and the Cold War. And I'm going to think about today in terms like online privacy, surveillance, Big Brother. And now I have a deck of terms for my students where they're going to be thinking specifically about the book, but also about world history and pop culture. So once you have come up with your set of 20 or so hexagons, divide your students into small groups, and they start moving the hexagons around and saying, how can I connect these? What hexagon deserves one of the 6 sides of another hexagon? And then is there a hexagon that can sort of tuck into that corner that connects to both? There's never a right answer. With 20 hexagons, you could have 100, 200 different maps. And what matters is the conversation that goes on when you're trying to decide this goes here, that goes there. How can you argue for it? Maybe you give them 20 minutes or so to build their web. And by the end, your group has come up with something really original, at which point you're going to invite them to report back. That could look like recording a Flipgrid, writing individually, snapping a screenshot, taping the web up on the walls and explaining the connections and then doing a gallery walk. There's just so much room for debate and there's so much emotion and excitement. Students really have to be pulling ideas from different courses and putting it all together. And I think that's where the critical thinking really comes in. And then those conversations become really memorable.
So this is something, like hexagonal thinking. So it's very important. So it helps you to develop an idea using this technique with a group of students. Okay. So it's very important to connect the ideas because in one of the MBS projects, for example, I'll just take an example that somebody, made a sensor in the garden of a smart home to detect wild animals. Okay. So then the question was, can you use the same sensor for something else? Detect a burglar in a home, okay, or detect a moving train or a incoming car. Okay, so all this connecting different ideas, okay, is also very important so through this hexagonal strategy, you can actually, this is a very, it's a just kind of suggestive strategy you can try, in fact. Yeah, Deepakala, you can unmute yourself and speak. I see your hand raised. Um, okay, so maybe we can take your question later. Okay, so coming to the third strategy, so it is called Disney Creative Strategy. Okay, so basically it was developed there. So you can see that to develop a project, you need to you need to have 4 different groups of students. Like so one of them, they are the dreamer. Okay, where their responses. So this is about dynamic exchange of ideas between the students of a group. Okay, so one has to be a dreamer where his or her role is to generate imaginative out of the box idea. Okay, so the dreamer encourages wild and fantastical concepts about limitations or constraints. They focus on, without limitations and constraints. So they can think anything and everything, like moonshot ideas also. Then the realist comes and provides practical insights, okay, or evaluates the feasibility of the idea. Then the realist also offers practical solutions, and then comes the critic who plays the devil's advocate and challenges everything. Okay, so it's the exchange between the dreamer, realist, and the critic, which actually makes a project much more refined and developed. Okay. So, for example, this is a problem statement. Okay, so in a fictional town called River Town, located in a semi-arid region, so residents are facing a severe water shortage. Okay, so the challenge is to develop a creative solution to address the water shortage, and the goal is to create a sustainable solution that not only conserves water but also fosters a sense of community and environmental stewardship amongst residents. Okay, so now the students, can be divided into 3 different groups. One can, talk about very much, moonshot ideas. Another group can, try to bring them a little bit to the ground, and the third group can actually play down everything as a devil's advocate. So this kind of, exchange of ideas is also works very well. Okay. So coming to another strategy, so which is called reverse thinking. Okay, so reverse thinking is also very important. Like when you have an idea, okay, so you can alter your perspective, and you can ask counterintuitive questions, okay, which will allow you to break through mental barriers and discover innovative path to success. So very simple idea. Okay, so example wins trust at work environment with reverse thinking. So you can see here. So so it's all about how you change your thinking to actually, change the perception of someone. Either you can build trust or erode trust. Okay, so this kind of thing also goes into the thing. So for example, it's a situation. Okay, so in a similar kind of situation where there is a lot of traffic congestion in a metropolis, and the city's transportation authorities are struggling to find solutions to alleviate traffic congestion and improve the flow of vehicles to the city. The challenge is to develop a creative approach to tackle traffic congestion in this city using a reverse thinking methodology. Okay, so you can give this type of techniques to the students also. You can explain this strategy and ask them to come up with this kind of statements. Okay. So these are some of the strategies. So how will you will do this reverse thinking strategies? You define the problem and reverse the problem, collect ideas, reverse the ideas, and identify the solutions. Okay, so it's like having different perspectives of a problem being thought from different angles. Okay, so this strategy also is a very well-known strategy and kind of works. Okay, so another strategy which can be common with all the other four strategies is, to reflect on the interconnectedness. Okay, so how you can do that with the students is, for example, you ask your group of students to close your eyes and take a deep breath, for example. Okay, so then for 30 seconds, you give a reflection. Okay, for example, think one of the things you have eaten or enjoyed today. Now imagine where in the world it might have come on. Okay, so is it coffee from Colombia, technology from Japan, music from another culture? People picture the people and places behind it. Okay, and then quick share. Share with your thoughts and table in terms of Padlets or write in a sheet of paper or something. Then share with the group. So this is also something which shows the interconnectivity of ideas and of basically the globalness which comes into their thought process. Okay, like how they will be very surprised. You will be very surprised to see the matches which you find in their answers. Okay, so these are some of the techniques which kind of motivates the students to think a little bit of globally. So this is the summary of assessing project-based learning activities. Uh, you need to have different assessment methods also. Uh, you need to implement different rubrics, conduct self and peer assessments very regularly, and you have to encourage reflections and revisions, and also engage with the public audience about your ideas and the implementation of ideas. Okay, and you can of course use technology for tracking this progress. Okay, for example, you can make this kind of rubric where so the definition the benefits of this kind of teaching approach is basically efficiency in grading, for example, focus, and it is focused on feedback, flexibility, but challenges are of course it is time consuming. It cannot be sometimes used for grades also. Okay, and there are some single point rubrics also which can be used. So I'm not going very much details in that, but you can also create rubrics using different websites. Okay, where you can share these with the directly with the students also. Okay, so you can actually make this kind of tables where you have the different criterias of your project and areas from improvement, evidence for exceeding standards. You can make this kind of very structured rubric for the students to have a clear guideline like how they're progressing in the project in a proper timeline. Okay, so ultimately what it boils down is this. I really like this statement, is the real project work is work that is chosen by children and done by children with the help of attentive adults who are there to mentor, facilitate, and support. So it's all finally boils down to the students themselves. Okay, like what and how much they can do. Okay, so any questions till now about developing this kind of project-based learning strategies from anyone? You can raise your hand, or share your ideas or any objections also if you have. Okay. Okay, so I'm almost nearing to the end of this session, but I would also like to tell you something about inquiry-based learning. Okay, so this is also applicable to designing projects. Is so here instead of unit plan, you can say that how you can design the project itself and develop an understanding of how questions can guide projects. Okay, so this is something also very interesting. So this is a case example. Okay, so Somanjan, I have a couple of minutes more, or is it over? Are you there?
No, no, sir. You absolutely have as much time as you want to take. I don't think that teachers are also wanting to go because the numbers are just going up. So,
Okay, okay.
so please
Okay,
take your time, sir.
okay, that's very nice. Okay, so for example, how this inquiry based learning or development of project happens. Okay, so for example, just take a little bit of time to read this thing. So this is a kind of like a case study, like for example, I can read it out. Like Philbert Abercrombie was, perhaps still is, the biologist from Oxford. So his research was on the distribution of flora and fauna within the Amazon River basin. The part that he loved most about his work was the need to spend months each year exploring and mapping some of the most remote parts of the basin, following some of the smallest of tributaries. The remoteness of the area and the exploration really appealed to him, satisfying his sense of adventure and curiosity, and at the same time giving him a certain sense of peace. There was only one thing that drove him up the wall: the masses of tiny flies that would forever pester him, getting into his eyes, nose, and mouth. So it just drove him crazy. Okay, so one day, Filbert was at his work and suddenly noticed that he was no longer swatting away at the pesky little flies. There were no flies around. He was, of course, delighted, that he also wondered why. He was really curious. So he sat down and looked around, looked at his notes, and tried to think of all possible explanations for the lack of flies in the area. Okay, so this is really a very interesting scenario. Okay, you can actually use this on the students to, on your students. So a guy sitting in a river basin, you know, really bothered by the flies, one day finds that there are no flies around. Okay, and he is looking for an explanation, a scientific one, because of course you have to remember that he's a biologist from Oxford. Okay, so this is the Amazon fly problem. Okay, so you can discuss, like, you can make the group discuss, like, where, why were there no flies? Okay, so this is the fundamental question, and then generate at least three possibilities. So each member, okay, has to generate at least three possibilities, like why there are suddenly no flies. Okay, so can anyone take a guess, by the way, before I, of course, the answer is coming at the end of the session, but can anyone take a guess, like why there can, a scientific guess, if something comes to your mind? Anyone? No one? Okay, maybe, am I able to, okay, Deepakala can unmute. Uh, okay, anyways, you can think about this.
Sir, Miss Devika Vinod has written an answer in the chat. I'm going to read
Okay.
it out for you. In fact, a couple
Yeah.
of people have.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer that Miss Devika has written is climate. And
Mm-hmm.
Vanita ma'am, Bhaswati ma'am, and Vijay Lakshmi ma'am also have written climate change. That's the
Okay.
answer that we've gotten on the chat as of now.
Okay, okay, that's very interesting. Okay, so now let's see, like, how we develop this answer. Okay, a little bit in a very stepwise manner. Okay, so yeah, so in the debriefing, okay, to the students, okay, so what you have to think is, what does this inquiry make you want to do? Okay, and what questions do you now want to ask, and how many of you just want the answer? Okay, so these are some of the categories of questions you can ask to the students. Okay, and you can also think in your mind also. Okay, and uh, so there are basically three different ways where you can approach the answer. So one is like factual. Okay, there has to be some fact, and one is conceptual. So factual means, like, there might be some real phenomena which is going behind the answer. Okay, like what really is very specific to the Amazon rainforest itself. Okay, another is conceptual, like you use your previous concept, like of biology or ecology or environment. So maybe and also debate. Okay, you want to debate, like, okay, this happened somewhere in the world, okay, this might happen here also. Okay, so the answer, for example, which you have given, like climate change, what it is, like, is it factual, is it conceptual, or is it debatable? Okay, so that's the uh, Okay, so so that's the question. You know, so we are going to structure our thoughts a little bit more. Okay, so these are the factual questions. Okay, so these are open questions which you might Google and find the variations in your answer. Okay, so for example, what is a system? So then there are conceptual ones. Okay, so these are open-ended questions drawn from the statement of inquiry. Okay, so why do the conditions within the systems need to keep it in the balance? And there are some debatable questions also, like questions which provoke further discussions. Okay, so you can actually have this kind of questions going in your group. Okay, so so we have already know our statement of inquiry. Okay, but then we need to develop our inquiry questions. Okay, to kind of go towards a proper solution. Okay, so these are the so inquiry questions, so which are drawn from and inspired by the statement of inquiry itself. Okay, and the factual questions also, there can be some factual questions also, which actually gives the student an entry point or a hint to the answer. Okay, some prompts which actually leads them to exploring the concepts and the context altogether. Okay, and these inquiry questions are initially actually teacher design and should give students the opportunity to start asking their own questions. Okay, think about the Amazon fly, for example. Okay, so you can actually put some questions in a very structured manner to come to the question. Okay, so bit deviating from the Amazon fly. So for example, in history, for example, if somebody is talking about the French Revolution, and the concepts are change, okay, related to revolution, causality. So these are the different questions. Okay, so from top to bottom, what causes revolutions? What are the causes of French Revolution? When did the French Revolution start? Okay, so then this is the inquiry section. Okay, so this is the inquiry questions, and then followed by few of the action sections. Okay, followed by the inquiry sections. So you can break down these questions, which can ultimately lead to the understanding of the problem itself. Okay, so for example, in terms of math, geometry, and relationships, how do we justify the idea of innovative design? How do we justify the use of triangle as a basis for innovative design, or something like this? So inquiry section and then the action section followed by it. So there are debatable inquiry questions also. So for example, in team sports related to communication, so does the whole communicate more than the sum of its parts? Okay, so this is like a debatable inquiry question. So does communication always increase the productivity of the team in terms of a team sport? And then a final and action question: do soccer players always communicate? So there is the inquiry section and there is the action section where you can build up the things. Okay, so so these are some of the examples of conceptual inquiry questions, factual inquiry questions. Like what causes these revolutions in French Revolution. Conceptual is, how do we justify the idea of something, and debatable is, does the whole you ask questions, you try to inculcate a kind of debate in these things. Okay, so uh, so a very helpful approach is, of course, like some teachers, they also often use lines of inquiry to help them design better questions, because they have already thought of how the concept and context will be unpacked in terms of content of their unit, okay, or of their project. Okay, so you have to actually have a set of like lines of inquiry ready to actually help the students to gradually build, provide tidbits of them and build up their concepts and arrive at the conclusion. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of like the same thing. So three different things like factual, conceptual, and debatable questions which you can ask, so this is another case example where the statement of inquiry is in making environmentally sustainable changes to existing sources of energy should be based on supporting evidence. Okay, the key concept is change. So you can actually write this even if your own ideas you have. So these are techniques actually which you can use. Then you can actually write about some of the factual line of inquiries. Okay, so what does it mean to create a change? Okay, so this can be a factual line of inquiry. Then conceptual line of inquiry is why might something need to change, or how can we determine which type of energy is sustainable in different contexts? Okay, and then debatable line of inquiry again is example is to what extent can decisions made as a result of changes affecting the environment becoming unsustainable? Okay, so you need to have a balance of this all three kind of line of inquiries so that your tips do not become kind of like one-sided. Okay, so you have to think it through. So these are the techniques. Okay, so these are some of the techniques to inspect your questions. Okay, so are these initial launching questions broad enough? So you have to ask yourself before you design this question, are these initial launching questions broad enough to allow students to openly explore the concept, context and the content your unit throughout the inquiry cycle? Have you considered how and when launching inquiry questions will be presented to the students? Do these initial inquiry questions promote access to learning for all the students? Do these launching inquiries questions have the potential to initiate student engagement? And have you considered background and age of your students when designing this initial inquiry questions? So this last point is also very important when designing a project, that suppose the team should think about a project which is not well beyond their age, or well they're actually more than, maybe it is suitable for far lesser age students. Okay, so there should be a very much balance. Okay, so these kind of questions or problems you have to think before you think about the final project. Okay, so by the way, I think you might have thought about the Amazon Fly till now, like what kind of factual, conceptual, and debatable questions you might ask. Okay, so maybe you want to write about one factual question, one conceptual question, and one debatable question you want to ask the students. You can write in your chat box maybe about the Amazon Fly problem. So I'll give you like maybe 1 minute. You can just type something. I can't see the chats though. So you're getting some text, Sumanjan? Or...
Yes, sir, I am. Let me know if you would want
Yeah,
me to
yeah.
read them out.
Yeah, sure, sure.
But I've not got anything to do with the fly recently.
Okay. Maybe.
Varsha ma'am has written something, but I'm assuming this is for something else.
Okay. Then let's take that after I finish the next slide, maybe. Okay. So yeah. So basically, this is the answer. Okay. So I'm giving you the answer also. So at that particular site, the water level had risen so that plants that were normally above the water line were then submerged. The submerged leaves secreted a chemical into the water which had acted as a natural pesticide. Okay, so of course you knew this answer before, but now you can think like how you would actually have different stages of inquiry questions given to the students to engage this discussion. Okay, so you can use it as an example. Later you can go back and three broad categories like factual, conceptual, and debatable. This really works. Like if you can structure your thought and teaching process, it actually works really well. Okay. Okay,
Soumik sir,
so yeah,
you just said that most of the teachers might have already known the answer,
yeah.
and before you went ahead to explain your answer. But
Uh,
very interestingly, in the chat box, I can read most
uh-huh.
of them are saying it's a totally unexpected answer. They got to know it from you. That's the major sentiment. And
Yes. No, that is exactly the thing. I mean, so this is one of the problems which has a very unexpected answer. Okay. but the role of the teacher is to formulate questions, in such a way that it helps them to arrive to the answer. Okay, so that's the comment I have. But yeah, I mean, this is one of the examples where you have a really unexpected answer, actually. Okay, so it's very important to devise the problems you keep to the students, okay, because that's what, you know, helps them to come to a solution. Okay. Okay. So I'm kind of like at the end. So I kind of discussed about how curiosity, is related to motivation. I showed you an example of a novel laureate, our very own. Then I showed you a little bit of techniques where you can use project-based learning or inquiry-based techniques. So now I have a question for you. Like, since you already know about the Macmillan budding scientist projects, okay, your thoughts and suggestions, like how now that after this discussion, how do you think we can ignite the students' passion for this kind of projects, or so that they get better ideas and work on better ideas? So any thoughts will be very. It's like a kind of a discussion we can have. So any thoughts on this will be appreciated, actually. So you can take some time to type it, or you can raise your hand and speak, maybe some of you.
I would now encourage that let's unmute ourselves and talk because Professor Soumik has been, sharing wonderful examples for a long, long time, and I've been reading out your messages, which are very, very encouraging. But the point is, I'm the only one who's reading out. Uh, it means the world if you're able to share the same enthusiasm, speak it out, so that Professor Soumik can, for himself, can hear them as well.
Yeah.
Anybody you want to share your feedback, your opinion, uh, things that you like, things that you were typing, about to type in the chat box, more than welcome.
Yeah. And of course, like, feel free to write to me also. You can email me, maybe Sumanjan, I think my email ID can be shared. So they can, of course, like, get back to me if they, want to consult me, or, have, want some clarification or some advice later also. That can be done, definitely, you know. So, yeah, so
Yes,
I
sir.
think. Yeah, so I think it will take some time to process also, like some of these techniques before you can really implement some of them, or this kind of thought process in your project. So I think this might be really helpful. Okay. So yeah, so I think I'll just close my talk here. Okay, so since we started with curiosity in science, so I wanted to, and also Sir C.V. Raman, I wanted to stop with one of his very inspiring quotes, like India could progress only through science, more science, and still more science. Okay, so this is one of the famous quotes by C.V. Raman, and I think it's still relevant nowadays. It's still relevant to this date. Okay, and then I would like to add that it has to be definitely curiosity driven. Okay, you can do wonders if you have a kind of a very well structured curiosity driven learning approach towards science. Yeah. So that's all from my side. So I can
Like,
unshare it, right? The screen now. Stop
yes,
sharing
sir.
the
Yes, sir.
screen.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. I was just about to wrap up. I'll just conclude the session, sir. Thank you so much, Soumik, sir, for this. I must say, it was a very, very interactive and engaging sessions. I mean, now that you have turned off your screen sharing, you will be able to go through the chat box, and
Yes.
it's overwhelming the kind of responses that are coming our way. I was grinning
Mhm.
from ear to ear, but I mean, it's always heartfelt that you can read it as well. I have got
Mhm.
a little note prepared, and this is completely taken inspiration from what Soumik sir had shared. So allow me to please read it out for you all. Why is the sky blue? A simple and innocent question in the mind of a young boy led to India's first and still the only Nobel Prize in Science won while working in India. The curious boy grew up to be none other than Dr. C.V. Raman, who answered the question not just for himself, but for the world. And this is the sentiment under which Professor Soumik and the entire team at IIT Delhi and by extension Macmillan Education, we got behind this idea, this thought, this sentiment that we are on a mission to ignite curiosity amongst the mind of our bright young students. Because who knows, a simple innocent question, as innocent as why is the sky blue, can make wonders, and you just do not know the next Nobel laureate in science might be sitting in your classroom. So it is, as educators, it is our privilege to be able to impart certain amount of knowledge, certain amount of curiosity, and a lot of mischief amongst them. And with that, on your chat box, you will see I've shared a link. This is the link in which when you click on it, you will be able to generate your own certificates. And I would urge you, all of you, to please go on the link and download your certificates right now. The link would be kept live for 24 hours, and after that, the link will be disabled. Just as this is a self-generated certificate link, unfortunately, we at Macmillan will not be able to send any certificate via email. Your certificate needs to be generated by you. And on that note, Professor Soumik, thank you so much. And dear teachers, stay tuned for the next webinar. We will be sending you communication over email. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Somanjan. Thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for attending. Okay. And have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.